What's up guys, Asian here with a PTS video for you guys. So as you guys might remember from the last two videos, we are in this sort of off-cycle PTS where they're testing out a couple of changes to light attacks and heavy attacks. So obviously I've been on a PTS for quite some time now, just testing out a couple of different builds here and also just seeing how badly these changes are affecting overall DPS. So for this video, we're going to be kind of hyper-focusing in on the magDK, mainly because the magDK is currently the strongest magicka DPS spec in the game right now. Plus, magicka DPS in general should be hit a little bit harder than stamina DPS if these changes go through. And that's because magicka DPS tend to rely more on their light attacks as one of their primary damage sources compared to stamina DPS. That's not to say stamina DPS won't be hit hard, it's just that magicka DPS are going to be feeling this change hit them a lot harder. So basically what I did for the magDK was I took a look at basically two different scenarios. So first I just basically made 0 changes to my current build on live and just did that. So pretty much just light weaving as I normally do currently on live on Storm. The second one was replacing all my light weaves with a heavy attack. That is specifically for between my spammables. So basically what I did was instead of light weaving between force pulses, I was using the Asylum build, I basically heavy attacked between force pulses instead. The idea behind that is obviously to kind of see how heavy attacks stack up with light attacks, because the whole point of this is to make heavy attacks the damage dealing attacks, so to speak. Then finally I decided to test out just what happens if I just use a heavy attack build. Just a magDK heavy attack build that I kind of came up with more or less on the spot. It's probably not completely optimized as a heavy attack build, but it should give us some sort of idea of where heavy attack builds more or less stand compared to your standard light attack build that you would normally see on the live server right now. So we're taking a look at two main things. First one is sustain. The second one is obviously damage. So we have our 3 parses here. So you can get a preview of the numbers here, and you guys can sort of can take a gander at which DPS matches up which test here. You'll also notice I did do a couple of sort tests, but I'm going to go back and redo those because I realized that the sustain graphs don't actually show up if I switch characters. So I have to go back and do those so I can actually get the sustain graphs for you guys. Let's start off with what was the weakest. So this is the 68.3k DPS. This was the heavy attack weaving build. So as a reminder, I light attacked between applying my dots. So basically, if I was doing a bunch of dots all together, so let's say engulfing and burning embers, so we're running out, I'll do light attack engulfing flames, light attack burning embers, and then do a heavy attack into force pulse. So this is an Asylum build here, as you can tell. I had to perfect Asylum here, Tuzan, Elfbane, and Sororia. So that was kind of the build that I was running here. And again, 68.3k. Now in terms of sustain, not that bad, and that was because I was including light weaves here and there when I was doing all of my dots. So remember, light attacks now restore resources back. Go ahead and take a look at magicka regen here. Unknown, I don't know what that is, but light attack restore here is about 180 additional regen per second. So even though I'm only light weaving between my dots, I'm still getting a decent amount of light attack restoration for magicka here. So overall, sustain's not terrible. Now, again, this is just for a magicka DK, so depending on a specific heavy attack build, more on that on a later video when I take a look at magSork heavy attack build. This might not necessarily be the case depending on how your heavy attack build is going to be set up. The second highest DPS is going to be this one here, just shy of 71k. And this is actually the pure heavy attack build. So this is just heavy attacks and dots. I still light attack between all my dots. So you can see here I still have light attack restoration here, 122. I don't know why there's 2 because I probably the lightning staff. I had a lightning staff on the front bar, so it's probably 2 separate things. So we add them together and we get about 180. So that more or less falls in line with what we saw earlier with the heavy attack weaving. Now we did end up getting 71k, just shy of 71k, so we did do more DPS here with just a pure heavy attack build compared to running an Asylum build with the heavy attack spammable between force pulses. Heavy attacks here are actually quite strong. You can see here that the final pulse on your lightning heavy attack is about 84.7k here. This is with I But this is with molten armaments as well, so we do get the additional 3000 base increase. So as a reminder, you guys might have seen my Hjalnar video and the Stagger video, but all these flat increases in damage are not affected by things like damage done, spell damage, anything like that. They're only affected by damage taken and some other kind of very, very niche sort of modifiers here. So while it does say 3000, it's going to be a little bit more than 3000, which take into consideration all of the damage taken modifiers. But this one was a little bit more cut and dry. So Perfectoria, Zan, and Mother Sorrow. I just realized I used 7 light instead of 511, but that shouldn't impact our DPS all too much. If anything, it'll probably be less than 1k difference, so not that big of a deal here. So here, heavy attack builds seem to be doing better than heavy attack weaving with the spammable. That's something to be expected. Again, this is just for magDK, so if you're running something like a magsorg or something else, might not necessarily be the case depending on your specific build. Finally, the last one, process of elimination here, this is the light attack weaving build, so 76.1k here. So despite the fact that Zos tried to make so light attacks are sustain and heavy attacks are damage, light attack weaving build is still going to pull out ahead compared to heavy attack weaving and a raw heavy attack build. Now again, a heavy attack build for magDK probably isn't completely optimized. I can probably make a couple of changes here and there to better optimize the build itself, but it's probably fairly close to what I would be able to do if I were to fully optimize the build for a heavy attack build. So even then, we're falling short by around 5k or so compared to a raw light attack build. Now I have a couple of theories as to why this is. So heavy attacks still eat up more than one global cooldown. So remember, you are limited based on the ability global cooldown, which is about 0.9 seconds or so. So you are basically eating up one additional global cooldown every time you're using a heavy attack, depending on what weapon you're using. But for a flame heavy attack, for example, your flame heavy attack is eating up one additional global cooldown. So instead of doing something like light attack spamble, light attack spamble, now you're doing heavy attack spamble. So you basically lost the damage of one light attack and one spammable in the hopes of that your heavy attack is going to make up that difference, and usually that is not going to be the case. Take a looking at Force Pulse, for example, we see we are hitting 13.3, 13.3, so that's about 26, 40k or so, probably 41k. This is on top of all, this is before taking consideration like any sort of burning additional damages, your enchant damage, things like that from Force Pulse, any sort of cleave damage, versus and additional light attack here, so 11.8. So we're talking about maybe 54k or so in terms of lost damage. And you're taking a look at the heavy attack build here, where we have 72.5k. So it's definitely not great because you are losing more global cooldowns, you're losing more spammables compared to just running the raw light attack build. Now, in terms of sustain, no issues at all. So the sustain for all of these builds were pretty much more or less identical to each other. The amount of sustain I was getting from the light attack build was obviously going to be a little bit better here, so 418 with light attack restoration, so a lot more sustain here. But despite the fact that they tried to make it so heavy attacks were the damage attacks, we still pulled higher DPS here because you're getting more spambles off by using light attacks instead. So overall, their stated goal of making heavy attack builds stronger, or it is met. Heavy attack builds definitely feel stronger, but they're still not matching up to light attacks. The gap definitely has shrunk by a lot. 5k is definitely a shrinking of the gap between a heavy attack build and a light attack build, but it's still beneficial to learn how to light weave for that additional resource return. And like I mentioned in yesterday's video, if you're doing a heavy attack build, again, this is just a magDK. On something like a magsorg or a magplar, it might be a little bit different depending on your sustain situation, because magDKs do have the combustion synergy. Other classes might have other sources of sustain and things like that, but they might also have more drain as well. So the sustain for a heavy attack build might not be the same on a different class as compared to a magDK. So just in general, it does seem like light weaving is still going to be the best thing to do, even if these changes go through. But despite the fact that Zos tried to change it so light attacks and heavy attacks, they basically did a 180 there, they didn't really change the meta. You're still going to be getting the most DPS out of a light attack build. And this is a pretty big nerf to overall DPS. This is about This is about a 10 to 12k drop from my best parses on live right now on Herostorm. So it is definitely a significant DPS drop. You're talking about 15% or so, 10 to 15%, probably up to even 20%. Again, this is just on magDK, so on different classes it'll probably be a little bit different depending on your abilities and class sort of passives and things like that. But that pretty much concludes it for this video. Let me know down in the comment section below if you guys have done your own tests on the PTS, particularly if you're doing tests on other classes. Again, I only focused in on magDK because this is my main DPS, and this is the highest hitting magic DPS in game right now. So please let me know what your own tests have concluded and whether or not they line up with what I managed to get. But again, that concludes the video. Hope you guys enjoyed, and I'll see you guys in the next dungeon.